Hello and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. I am your aforementioned Spooky Chris Ringler. I'm really excited to welcome author Evan Kidwell to the podcast today. He released his first book, Timaeus Spark and the Luck Curse, which is available now. And we are going to talk about that and his inspiration and the process. And I think it's a great conversation that you're going to really enjoy. And I look forward to you joining us. Thanks. Thank you, Evan, for joining me. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you today, Chris?
I am well. It's an honor to have you. I'm so glad you had time for me.
Absolutely. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. And I know you worked diligently to get it on the calendar, so I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. So let's just dive right in here. So you first committed to writing your novel, with Timaeus Spark and the Luck Curse,
Yes.
um, after a leadership conference in 2023. Had you had any writing experience before that?
None. Yeah, so I'm the black sheep in this category of authorship, right? So I was at a leadership conference in 2023, and I had actually had a dream about 5 years prior, and I keep a dream journal, and I had been thinking about this book for about 5 years. And I was kind of caught off guard, but in the best of ways, if that makes sense. I was at a leadership conference, 2023, as you said, and the guy from stage said he's the keynote for the whole event. And, there's 400 of my peers. I'm originally from the insurance background. I have an insurance background. And he says, I want everyone to pull out a piece of paper, but a physical piece of paper, not your iPhones, not your computers. And I want you to physically write down something that scares you and something that excites you that you want to accomplish in 2024. And so I wrote down, write my book. And unbeknownst to me, he points right at me. I'm sitting in the front row, and he says, "Come on up here." And he confirmed I'd written something down. And so I went up, and he's like, "What'd you write?" And I said, "Write a book." And he goes, "Oh, so like a finance book, an insurance book?" It's like, "No, like a fantasy book." Like that's what I want to do. So yeah. And then I got off stage. His whole presentation, his whole keynote was literally grilling me on my why I wanted to write a book and why that was my goal for the
Wow.
year, and how everybody in the room was going to keep me accountable for the whole rest of the year. And then I got off stage, and my colleague says, "You know what this means, right?" And I was like, "What?" He says, "You can't show up at the same event next year without a book." So so that was my thrown into the deep end side of authorship. Pretty quickly after that, I ended up hiring a author coach, actually, who had written about 20 something books himself, and doing not only a class with him, but also getting feedback and coaching from him. He gave me a lot of really good advice along the way. I did also have a lot of naysayers. I had one guy say, "Well, do you have an MFA?" And, the unknowing artist author, right, said, "What is that?" And,
I don't have one, and I've been writing for a
masters in
long
fine
time, so
arts.
there's yeah,
So,
that's
so
fine.
yeah. Yeah, so he said that one guy said if you because you don't have an MFA, there's no way you're writing a book in a year. And I take that as a challenge. So I'm like, you know what? Watch me, right? Like this is what I'm gonna do. And I will say, growing up as a kid, I did always create stories in my head. I actually had instances where I would walk home from school, and my walk home from school was an hour to an hour and a half. I mean, nowadays kids don't do that anymore, but when I was a kid, that happened. And so I would create these characters I would interact with as I would be walking home from school. And it was an escape from childhood bullying, and so that's important to my story as well. So yeah, it's I've always been having stories in my head. I've just never put them on paper till now. So
That's amazing. Now, um, so what kind of stories were you telling yourself?
actually, so a lot of some of the very characters that are in this book, I've actually incorporated into the writing process. I had back so you'll understand the parallels to my book, but back when I was a kid, I created this made up world, and it was called. I was a kid, so my titling was really bad, right? But but I had this world where it was basically Power Ranger like people, and I called them Power Men, and they had powers, and my book has a lot of power elements to them and people unlocking powers, and so I've actually been able to incorporate some of those very characters that I created as a kid into this book, into this world that I built. So
That's amazing. Did you
yeah.
now, did you ever, as a kid, draw these characters, or did you ever
No,
visualize
no,
them?
you don't want to see me physically draw something. I would do very poorly at that, right? So I have an overactive imagination, so I see the characters in real time in my mind's eye, and when I'm reading a book, shout out to my wife. I'm married with three kids, and the other day I was listening to an audiobook, and I listen to audiobooks at 1.5 to 1.75 speed just because I can understand it, and it paints the picture for me. And my wife goes, "How can you even understand that?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just do, right?" So I have this imagination where I can see it like a movie in my head as I'm listening to it or as I'm reading it. And so I think that has gone a long way for sure, is that overactive imagination. But yeah.
Which is funny because I'm be real honest. That is way more valuable than an MFA. Like
There you go.
all day.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
like I have known a lot of authors. I have been writing for a long, long time. I do not have an MFA. I don't know. I'm sure somewhere there's an MFA then someone I know, but it's the imagination is what matters, not that you have a degree. So you have the key ingredient you needed. So that's perfect.
I appreciate that. Yep, yep, exactly right.
So what made writing a book the goal you wanted to achieve? Like of anything you could want to achieve like in that kind of a space that they asked.
Yeah, so first of all, it's two parts to the question he asked. What something that scares you and something that excites you. It had to be the same thing. Well, the only thing I can think of in that moment was it would be really scary to write a book this next year. Like that's just, don't get me wrong, I had the idea in my head, but if I'm really being honest with myself, scary would be writing my book. That would be scary. But man, if I finished it and I got it done, there's a certain degree of excitement there too. And I will say, I remember I was actually talking with my mom, not book related. We were actually watching the Harry Potter movie, the second one of the Crimes of Grindelwald. And I remember she said, like, as we're watching the movie, it was the scene where, like, the blue flames were swirling around and, everyone's trying to fend them off. And my mom goes, "Man, who thinks of stuff like this? Like, this, like, nobody thinks like this." And I was like, "Actually, I do." Right. And so there was that moment, and then the dream. And I had been kind of stewing on this dream because I had created these same kinds of characters back when I was a kid. I'd really been almost reopening that world up of like right where I left them, like here's where those characters were, kind of thing. And so I'd been thinking about this book for about 4 years, 5 years. And then when he mentioned that, it was just the first thing that came to my brain. I thought scary and exciting. I would love to write my book. Now, when I wrote that down, one, I did not know I was going to be called out on stage. And by the way, if I had not been, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now, Chris, because when you create goals for yourself and it's just you and maybe your spouse that knows those goals, nobody else is keeping you accountable, and it's very easy for us to go, maybe tomorrow, right? Or maybe next year, right? And so that's one piece of that equation. And I think at the end of the day, once my colleague reminded me that I've now committed to 400 of my peers that I'm going to write this book and that I really have a time crunch now on me. I started writing just a little bit every day. I got a coach. He explained to me some very, very valuable feedback. Things like, the first piece of feedback he gave me, I was a little confused by. Well, not confused, just more like, uh, it was more like a duh statement. Well, duh, like that makes sense. He says the best way to write a book is to write a book. And I said, "Ooh, duh." Right. And I was like, okay, but like, give me a little bit more depth than that because that's pretty normal. Like that makes sense to me. And he said, you don't get to the end of a manuscript without writing just a little bit every day, right? And he says you could take breaks, but you need to be disciplined. You have a year. And you really need to have your book done by, call it the July timeframe, if by October you want it to be done with editing and everything like that too. And if he hadn't have given me that advice, I wouldn't have put that fire under my butt. I wouldn't have realized that, by the way, the editing process, which I don't like, takes more months than it almost took me as many months to edit it as it did for me to write it. So, yeah,
I understand. And I get the fear part of it because when you are so in love with some wanting to do something, the fear of failing at it, and then you just lose that special thing that even if you never do it, it's always there. Like, well, I still have this I can do. So I do
yep,
understand that. I get that. So all right,
yep.
but here's the big question now. Then I got to slot this in.
Okay.
Did you go to the conference the year after?
I did. Yep, I qualified for the I had already qualified for this conference when he called me up on stage at this event, right? So
Okay.
I already knew I was going the next year to the event.
Did you get
And
did you get to go with boxes of books and say like, here, they're on sale?
no, because it wouldn't have been appropriate for that event,
Ah, fair.
only because it was again an insurance event. It had nothing to do with young adult fantasy, right? And so, but I did do it. I completed it. It was ready and live, and people did ask me at that event, "Hey, did you do your book?" Yep, it's on Amazon. You can go get it now. And so, and then they did end up giving me a little plug at the end of the event. They're like, hey, remember he made that commitment, and half the room had been there, half the room didn't remember, right? And but half the room was like, oh yeah, we remember that. And then they showed a quick plug of my book and saying he did it, and here's his book. Go find it on Amazon. So that was fun
That's
because then
awesome.
afterwards, everyone was like doing the high five thing, and that's amazing, and you did what you said you were going to do, and all that kind of fun stuff. So
That is fantastic. They had to feel great.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so when you were younger, what were you reading? What was inspiring you?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I remember my one of the very first interactions with young adult fantasy was a Harry Potter book, and I was in fifth grade, and my fifth grade teacher read it to the class, Harry Potter 2, actually, as a like this is our reading time, and she would read it out loud to the class. Well, as soon as she read that book, I was like, great, now I got to go get the first one, and the rest is history from that standpoint. I was always the kid that would pre-order it, and then I'd pay extra to get it a couple days early, and then, I'd have the book done before anyone had actually gotten their books, right? So I was a big Harry Potter fan, and another really big drive, like author that I loved, or I'm going to call it a series because I don't remember who wrote it. I think it was Applegate, but was the Animorph series growing up as a kid. So loved those. There was like 60 of those. Every time they came out, I pre-ordered those as well. And then as I got into being an adult, I still have always loved young adult fantasy. It's always been my go-to genre that I read. But one of my favorites of all time was Christopher Paolini's Aragon.
Okay.
And it's funny because I had seen the movie, and this was before I read the book. I was in my 20s or something whenever it came out, and I had not read the book. And so I didn't even touch that book for a long time because the movie was awful. And I always, if I do watch a movie, I do like then actually reading the book because I love figuring out how it's different and what changes did they make and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't touch it for a long time. And I think somewhere along the way, I found somebody had mentioned, like, oh, you should try Aragon if you like these kinds of books. And I was like, I mean, the movie was pretty bad. And they're like, yeah, but it's not the movie. Like you gotta read it. And I did. And I think yes, J.K. Rowling will always have a special place in my heart, but I think from that point, Christopher Paolini is one of my favorites for sure. So that was kind of my influences growing up as a kid, and obviously I have a recent books that I've read that I really enjoy as well. But man, it was all about Animorphs and Harry Potter as a kid, and then even in college, like early college, Percy Jackson series, right? Like those kinds. I've always loved the fantastical world and the mythical beasts. So
Fantastic. Now, back to your book. Your book's called Timaeus: Spark and the Luck Curse. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Timaeus Spark and the Luck Curse follows my hero is named Timaeus Spark. And he actually starts out in a state of society of basically his whole family has been servants their whole lives. And he's going to Mythica High, which is a magical academy with the hopes of unlocking a power. The unlocking of a power would change his fate for the rest of his life, actually, because in order to unlock the powers, the government wants the students to unlock their powers sooner rather than later, so they don't misclass them. So I have a mythical beings of old gave our individuals or human beings powers a long time ago, and then genetically we've actually transferred those powers from generation to generation. But as you can imagine, many generations of that means you don't really know what power you're going to unlock. Okay, you can sculpt that a little bit, but there's still no guarantee that you're going to know what power you unlock. But in order to unlock the powers, they actually go through a series of very intense trials. The trials are almost torture-esque, right? It is meant to drive the students to their brink and to their breaking point so that powers unlock or they don't. But if they don't, they find themselves in a non-powered situation, and so at the end of the day, when they unlock a power, they get classed into this class system. I call it bloodlines, right? Appropriately so, because the powers have passed along via the bloodlines over the years. And which power they unlock is not actually as important as where they fall in that flawed society caste system. So you could unlock a dud power. All the powers are known in the society, right? You could unlock a dud power and find yourself in a top tier class and have the best jobs, the best opportunities, all that kind of stuff coming out of school, just because you got placed in that kind of higher bloodline. So that's the whole premise. And obviously, every one of the trials are super intense, and I have a very extreme fight scene at the end of the book as well. So I won't spoil anything, but I had a lot of fun writing it, and this is going to be the first in the series. I have several more in mind. I know for the next two, I have the next two mapped out in my head. I've already started on book two, and there's probably going to be 7 or 8 books in this series. So.
Amazing. Now, have you kind of set similar goals in mind? Like I want, like when you want these to kind of be done, or are you giving yourself a little more grace? Like, well, I know I'm gonna do them.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a combination of both of those. Okay. I had to take last year off. There was some personal stuff I'm not going to get into on this that I was going through. And so I took last year off. But my goal for book two is I would really like to have it done before I went recently to the Portland Fan Expo in Portland. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. And I would like to have book two ready to go before that same event in end of January next year. So that's what I'm throwing it out there into the world. I know it's possible because I've done it, right? Now it's just a matter of sitting down and actually doing it. And now I've announced it to people, right? And so I'm hoping people will keep me accountable as I go. And then this year, there's 2 additional projects I'm working on this year for my book. One is I would love to figure out an audiobook for it, which takes time as well. And I also recently went to a show, that Portland show, where 2 different authors on either side of me mentioned I need to do character art. So right now, this is the cover of my book you see behind me. But they said you want character art. You want people to like be able to be immersed in your story before they even walk up to your booth. Which again, I'm a new author, so I don't know these things. I like my cover, right? But nobody knows what they're getting with it. And so I've got some character art going to be dropping in a couple of days here, and I'm going to use that to create whole new banners for shows I'm going to. And I think 14 shows I've applied to for this year. Whether or not I get into them is a different story. We'll see, but they're all centered around the Pacific Northwest. So those are kind of my goals for this year. Eventually, long-term goals, right? Even if it's for the next one, I would love to get to the New York Times bestseller list on one of my books. So that's kind of my goals that I'm chasing right now.
That's amazing. And I mean, it has to feel a little less daunting because you've done it and
Hmm.
kind of you built the foundation. So you're just, it's always going to be challenging, but like it has to feel a little like, well, the mountain is a little bigger, but it's not. doesn't feel as scary.
And the mountain I'm climbing right now is that marketing mountain, right? People don't know about my book, they don't know who I am. And because I was in a very compliance-driven industry in the world of insurance, I had no social media following. We had to everything in the insurance world you have to run through compliance, which means I had zero social media following before this. And so it's just a slow burn of getting people to know who I am, getting people to pick up my book, getting people excited about my book. So I'm going to a lot of events to help with that. But I think that's the more daunting piece right now because I just don't know how to do it. I'm a millennial, but I don't know. I always read books and didn't make posts. So
No, I really do understand that because it doesn't feel as natural. Like it's I know personally, you know these things inside out, but you don't want to overtell it. Like you're trying
Mhm.
to tease it and not overtell it, and you're in your own head,
Mhm.
like am I overselling it? Like
Right,
do I need to dial it back? Like what
right.
do I do? So and I get and it doesn't feel natural to be a sales like hey buy this is great. Like you want them to come naturally, but you want to make them understand how excited you are because it's an exciting book.
Right.
So it is a
I
tightrope
do have
walk.
an advantage. Like I've been in the sales background my whole life. Now I just get to sell something I made. Like not somebody else's product. I got to sell my own. So that is an advantage, but still it's learning that game and it's a lot to it, right? So
And it just occurred to me, I'm throwing this into the ether, and you can offline, you can laugh at me. At one if you one of the shows you do, and I don't know how the age range, but I wonder if you could like a character, you could have somebody there and like meet so and so from like your book, and like people will be like, who? And you have them there, and they can meet them and go, oh, this is cool, like 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 that.
So I actually want to do that. So one of the things I've already talked to some people that do uh, uh, cons and cosplay, and one of the things I'd love to do at some point, I need a little bit more finances to this, but I think it'd be really cool, is have one or two cosplayers there for characters from my book. Okay. And I would do like a 10 by 10, or sorry, a 20 by 20 space, so like one of the end caps. And then the goal there would be they take a picture with my cosplayers, right? And then I don't know how this is possible yet, but I'm sure it is. Like, I just haven't seen it done yet, right? And then we take that picture, we put it on a cover, basically, and they have their own customized cover for their book
Oh
with
wow.
the cosplayers, and then I'll sign it, right? Like that feels like a really fun idea to me, but I need to play with how to do that a little bit more. So,
No, that's really cool. That's a real fun idea. That's a really cool idea. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's good. All right. So, what was the inspiration for the story? Like at the heart of it all?
Yeah. So, one of the things that was really important to me, especially when shedding light on things like bullying, was first of all, my world is a parallel world to ours, and it is not. You cannot enter it from ours. I know there are some. Even Harry Potter is a parallel world, but you can enter it from ours. It's. I did that on purpose because I wanted my world to be my world that I created and not necessarily have to follow the rules of how our world functions. But one of the things that I have noticed is at the end of the day, and I'm going to say this lightly, there are a lot of flaws in our society today. And so I wanted to create almost a mirror society where there are so many things wrong and people can see there's things wrong, but they don't necessarily feel empowered to be able to go do something about it. That's the same things that my own characters feel in the book. I wanted a power system, but it's more than just a power system. Okay. In my book, there are magical elements. There are things that, like mythical beings of old, yes, they blessed humans with powers, but why couldn't they have affected the magic surrounding them in the way the world moves, right? And so I wanted to make sure that there was that thread of, there's still magic in this world, not just. So when I say powers, people don't think of magic. except I show a couple of different examples of like locations that are magic filled, for example. That's a big part of it. I also did introduce technology. If it's today's like a parallel world to ours, there's going to be technology. They're going to have figured out how to kind of harness some of these powers in more ways than just a power user, right? And so that is all kind of inside of my book, but I really wanted to make it a point. Actually, one of the things that I will give you one small spoiler, so in case you need to bookmark it for yourself, right? But it's appropriate because it is what my cover is when I first started thinking of this idea, I thought to myself, because of my background in bullying and because of my not me bullying, but getting bullied and getting picked on, and I've gone through a lot in my life that many people shouldn't ever have to go through. I thought to myself, okay, how do I make my main character's power the power of resilience? And what would resilience look like? Like as a superpower, what would that look like, right? And so my main character has the power of minor luck. It's a leprechaun lore power, okay? And it's effectively yin and yang, right? Where more bad luck seems to happen to my main character than good. So, that was intentional, and he actually sees it as a luck curse. That's why the luck curse, right? So, but I really wanted to put how do you instill resilience as a power unless your kids are or your students are going through really intense trials where the theme of resilience shines through. Like it doesn't, I needed it to have that kind of flow, if that makes sense. So I knew I wanted to do the trials. I knew I had a pretty good idea of what my first trial was going to be when I first started writing, but I didn't know what the other ones were going to be until I kept writing and I found myself thinking through like, okay, what can I now put this character through? Because I write from multiple different perspectives. Each chapter, much like Game of Thrones, has a different kind of character's perspective. Like, what kind of thing needs to show up to cause this person to have a real struggle in their world and resilience. So resilience and friendship is a big theme throughout my series. So did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's fantastic. So your book has this rich mythology kind of at its base.
Yeah.
How did you go about building that?
Yeah. So I actually thought of that idea not from a mythical standpoint, but from my own daughter. So I have three kids. My middle child, who is 4, she has blue eyes, and my wife and I both have brown eyes. So I actually thought, how do I incorporate the powers to follow that kind of logic of genetics? And by saying it could happen from genetics, like I could have an instance where two angel blood families, right, produce or parents produce fairy blood, for example, right? Because that's the same concept as two brown eyes produces a blue eyed, right? And so, and in that particular instance in my book, I actually had her own family. It's so divided, right? That I have her own family outcast her own daughter because society cares more about the falling into the proper locations in the bloodlines than they do about their own family or friends. So what that allowed me to do was it allowed me to create a lot of conflict inside of my book around like things like identity and like, well, I technically belong to the angel bloods, but they don't accept me, and the fairy bloods don't accept me, and the only people that do seem to accept me are my friends, but those are non-powered individuals, right? So like a lot of that I'm trying to create. So um, I think at the end of the day, my mission was to make sure that I could create relatable characters that had real struggles that we as human beings have. Um, but the only way I could see doing that was creating a system like this where there had to be a reason for the trials, right? Like that was my initial. I knew I wanted to do the trials, but then I had to really think through why. Why do I need to do the trials? Like, what's the purpose of the trials? Yes, to unlock, and that's as far as I initially got. By the way, right? I'm a new author, so as far as I initially got was, well, it unlocks your powers. And thankfully, I had a really good editor, and my editor would come back and say, but why the trials? Why not something else? Like, why does it have to be that? Oh, okay. So then I have to build some backstory there about, a civil war that almost broke out 30 years ago, right? And so having a really good editor helped quite a bit because they were able to identify things I never would have even thought of as a new author, to really make the book sing and come to life and do what I wanted it to do in the first place. So.
Fantastic. Now you'd mentioned that you had done that show. Have you gotten a chance really to get out and meet people and support the book since it's been out?
Yeah, so this year I'm focusing on it a lot more. Like I said, 2025 was a bit of a dead year for me. Unfortunately, even though I launched the book at the end of 2024, I went to ECC, Emerald City Comic Con in 2025, and I went to maybe two other shows, and then life happened. Wife, three kids, that kind of stuff. My wife and kids are my priority, so I had to take a little bit of I'll call it a hiatus from writing for a little bit. But yeah, so I have gone to several shows now. Most of the shows I've gone to have been like Comic Cons, right? I guess it makes sense for fantasy to be in that same world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you're talking about an actual comic like, superheroes or, so I found myself doing a lot of those, but I have interests in like I'm a gamer at heart, so I think my book would do well in a gaming world as well. Board game world, gaming world, that kind of stuff. So yes, like I said, I have 14 different shows that I've applied to this year. And so basically April, May, June, it's almost every weekend that I've got a July something going on. So certainly at least two a month for the rest of the year kind of thing. So that is what I'm trying to do, and now I'm just trying to build my social media following as well. One of the things I find very helpful is actual feedback from readers. Because I wanted this to be a book, I always wrote this book with the intention or the philosophy of, would I, as a reader, want to read this book? Because if the answer is no, then I'm doing something wrong, right? Because there's certain things I don't like in books and I know that. So why would I add them to my own book, right? And so that's still my premise. Would I want to read this book? Would I want to read this series? Would I want to get invested 5 books in and feel like, oh, now what? Right. And so, anyways, that is, I think that answers your question.
Yeah.
But you could repeat the question too if I did not answer it. So,
No, no, that's perfect. How did it make you feel though, like having people buy the book from you and like, knowing that they're going to go on this journey with you? Such a fun feeling.
it is very fun, and I get so much enjoyment out of it. It is something I was called to do, and I wouldn't have realized that. I'm 38 now, so I wrote my first book at 36, I guess. And so it's very fulfilling for me. I get a lot of energy out of it. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and I think for me, I get when I meet people at shows and they get excited about my book. I have a guy that literally uh didn't he said, "Well, I don't really like fantasy, but I'll try it." He was an older guy, right? I said, "Okay, great. That's awesome." And he was at the show all 3 days for ECC in 20 last year in 2025. And he bought it on day one in on Friday. And each day he came back to me with different pieces of feedback. And it was really helpful to me because he's like, "Well, what are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about that?" And when he finished, he said, "This was a good book, and I'm really glad I bought it from you." Success. Like I win now. Like it was so satisfying to know that I wasn't off the mark when I wrote it. I wrote it with the intention of would I want to read it myself, and other people are experiencing that same joy in reading it as I got to experience in writing it. So, uh, yeah, it is quite the fun feeling, and I look forward to. So, I was sitting next to another author at the last show, and someone came up to her and said, "I got a tattoo of your book on my arm." And I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." I was like, "Man, maybe one day that'll be me."
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, and one of these days you'll have people that are cosplaying as your characters.
I love
So that's awesome.
it.
So I mean, we're about out of time. So how can people follow you and
Sure.
your series and buy the the first of many of these books?
Yep, absolutely. So first of all, please follow me on Instagram, Evan_Kidwell_author. I'm on Instagram. That's where I primarily most focus is Instagram. I also have a Facebook page, Evan Kidwell author on Facebook. And you can go to my website, timeousspark.com. It's Timeaous, spark.com. Uh, or you can find it on Amazon. You just type in Tomato Spark and it'll show up as well. So I'm trying to be very active and intentional on my social medias right now. I'm trying to respond to messages as I get them. And I'm really looking forward to you guys reading my books and hearing your feedback as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Evan, for making time for me. I wish you all the best in the series, and I look forward to speaking with you again as more books come out.
Awesome. I love it.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye. I want to thank Evan one last time for making some time for me. This was a great conversation. It is always exciting to talk to kind of emerging authors and to get their story and to get how they kind of got into it and what inspired them. And I think this is another great example of that. Timaeus Spark of the Luck Curse is available now. He gave you his Instagram during the podcast. To follow him. This is the first in what is a planned series. He is already kind of getting his stuff together to get the second book underway and hopes to have that done by next January. So it's going to be exciting to see where the series goes from here. I thank him. I thank you, listener. As for me, you can find all of my book links at spookychris.com. I have a whole parcel of stuff out there, from cozy mysteries to fantasy to kid stuff to really gnarly horror. It's all available on Amazon.com. Just look for Chris Ringler. That's me. And Spooky Chris has all my reviews and podcasts from the past and everything else. And you can find the podcast on your least favorite podcasting app or service. And I thank you once more. You will hear from me again. Take care of yourself. Farewell.